as you start peeling it away and you start thinking about, well, what is that image? Why is that image there? There's always these multi-layered ideas behind the work. The person that stays with it and continues to make it in their own terms, that's the artist, you know? And I get the sense that you guys are those folks. The minute that you show it to somebody, it's for that exchange of information and ideas between people. It doesn't have to be in a gallery. It could just be me giving you a drawing. And that creates a conversation. And that's really where the art kind of exists. It's a pleasure to have you guys here.
Does anyone have any questions that sort of, or thoughts that pop up as we're looking at these to start? Yeah.
This reminds me of the cartoons from like the 1900s. You know, we didn't have cable. I don't know, everybody didn't have cable back in the days. But these cartoon characters, I forgot what the cartoon guy was. He always ate collard greens, I think. Around that time, those cartoon characters, that's what this reminds me of.
Yeah, exactly. It takes you there.
Yes.
And that for me, that's successful because it took you to some place that you're familiar with. It doesn't have to be the Popeye cartoon.
Yeah.
It could be anything.
It took me way back in the days.
Exactly. You know, and then when you do that, once you're back there mentally, you start to think about where was I, what was I doing, what was my life like? You know, like there's a lot of different things that you're accessing. I started to really search through films because when I was little, I would sit down in front of like cartoons and, you know, things like that were art related, and I would just drink it in. So I was like a kind of movie cartoon junkie when I was really little. And I started to think about doing a film that talked about education and where I came from and public school and the difference between how a Black child understands history, their own history, differently than other folks. And when you start thinking about it, you know, Black folks are an oral history people. We don't have a history was removed, erased essentially for a lot of us. And stories and histories are passed down through this kind of storytelling.
I also just find it cool, like how like the origin from like the origin of this art, like kind of like came from like ignorance and all that from like their intent, their racist intent, basically. And I feel like it's kind of cool to see a person of color put their emotions and their own spin on it, kind of like changing the narrative a little bit.
Thank you. I mean, that means a lot to hear that.
I use like a lot of cartoons in my artwork too. And like, just like what you said about the pick by pick motion, I used to do that in high school where I had like a bunch of flip books and have to draw like literally every little piece on every page. So that's crazy. But my main question is like, I know, do you also use this technique to like symbolize like the motion within like the character's movements and everything?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I dig that.
It's a lot like your flip book, you know? In fact, flip books I was obsessed with flip books. You know, I would make them on pages. I was that guy that would like take your history book and like do the thing in the corner and then, you know. But yes, I think you know, one of the things like the wall drawings, I'll get to how I got to that, but I could do that image on every one of these walls and it'll be totally different. And it could be the same image, but the feel of it is gonna be 5 different versions.
I got a question. What is that snowman made out of?
He's made of fiberglass and foam. And then it's painted with like an auto painter. So we gave it to an auto place and they sprayed it in that black. So it's sort of a black and a blue. There's highlights of blue on it. His name is Black Frosty.
What?
Yeah. So for me, the snowman represents a lot of different parts of who we are, right? I mean, even if somebody in here has never been in a snowstorm, they know what the idea of a snowman is. And so it brings up ideas about childhood, about playfulness, about innocence, right? But then there's this point where during the season where that snowman starts to melt. And it goes from being this like really exciting moment about that first snowfall to like almost this sad sort of melancholy thing where the season is ending, the innocence is ending. Maybe it becomes like this dirty, like lots of gravel or something is in the snow and all of that, and he just starts melting. And it's always been like that very sad moment where you see it's like the death of the snowman. And for me, it's almost like the death of innocence and childhood, right? It's just kind of waning. So in almost all of my work, it has double, triple, quadruple meanings to it. The wall drawings basically came from my obsession with film. And if you notice the big blue area, it is very similar to the scale of a movie screen. So if you go to the movies, if you guys like going to the movies, that is a kind of reference to that. I always loved being in the movies. I actually like going to the movies by myself because there was something about sitting in a room by yourself and these massive images of, movie stars or cartoons or whatever it is. It was just me and that image. I was that little kid. So that's where the scale comes from. So it's always, whenever I do one of these, there's a border around the side. And that's always a reference to that movie screen. The size, the scale, whatever it is a reference to that.
What was your favorite art piece, and like what did you feel like after finishing it, or knowing that it looked exactly how you wanted it?
You know what? I don't think I have a favorite.
You don't have a favorite?
Mm-mm. It's almost like picking your favorite kid.
I have a follow-up to Larry's question. Since you don't have specifically a favorite piece, do you have a process that you enjoyed the most?
That's a really good question. Or what?
The one you didn't enjoy.
Oh, the one I didn't enjoy. You know what? Even the one that I didn't enjoy, I enjoyed going through the process of hating each other. It was so frustrating that I actually enjoyed it, and I felt like it's not always going to be the way that I see it. And you have to open yourself up to being like, okay, like sometimes you have to give it up. I think it's hard because I think that the wall drawings are probably my favorite, my go-to. Because for the most part, it's reliant on just me. But there's something really great about sitting in the studio quietly or, listening to the music that I choose and painting. That's kind of, the act of painting is probably my favorite thing to do. Mixing paint, putting it down, that kind of thing.
I have another question. What made you choose all the old childhoods, all the old cartoons? What made you choose that one over the new ones?
I think that, some of them are the most exaggerated of race imagery, right? Because people felt free to just say whatever it is that they wanted to other folks to their face. I think that there's a kind of, it speaks to what it was like then. And I think there are bits and pieces of it that still exist now. We're still dealing with a lot of this stuff. And it doesn't go away. It doesn't erase. It's something that's good, that we carry every single day. You're gonna deal with it today. You're gonna wake up tomorrow and have to deal with it. It's what gives us our strength in some cases, to not let those things run over you. You can take a negative and turn it into a positive. I can take something that was perceived as negative back then and put a whole lot of spin on it now and turn it into a positive feeling now. So that challenge is something that you fight with in the studio all the time, you know, when you deal with work.
At what point in your life did you realize like that you was an artist?
That's a real good question. I knew I wanted to make art. I just didn't know how to get there. I think you know when you become an artist? There's a moment when you're little and everybody is drawing. And then at some point, some kid in the class or girl in the class can draw horses or draws flowers or draws, you know, dogs or something. And they're really good and they're better than most of they can illustrate, right? Because there's a difference between illustrating and making, say, abstract art. So the person, at that point, some of us sit there and go, oh, I'm not any good anymore. I'm not as good as that person. I can't do a dog's head as well as that person. I'm gonna give up. The person that stays with it and continues to make it in their own terms, that's the artist, you know? And I get the sense that you guys are those folks. You know what I mean? No matter what's going on in your life, you're gonna stick with doing this thing. It's a kind of obsession. Or maybe you're the guy that just goes in your room and just sits there and draws and has like a graphic novel going. And your obsession it keeps going. You know, you're in class or something and you just almost zone out. You're in your own like art world. And that's when you know you're an artist.